This is the 3D VIEW-MASTER story, Bible Heroes. Samson und Delilah. VIEW-MASTER Reel 1. Picture 1. In the days of the judges, before Israel had a king, a cruel people called the Philistines fought against the Israelites. There lived in Israel a good man named Manoah, and he and his wife had no children. One day an angel appeared to them. "You shall have a son," said the angel, "and he shall begin to deliver Israel from the Philistines. But you must dedicate your son to God, and the hair of his head must never be cut." Soon a son was born to them, and they named him Samson. God gave him such strength that one day, with no weapon except the jawbone of a donkey, he single-handedly slew 1,000 Philistines. Because of this, the Philistines feared and hated Samson. So when he married a Philistine woman named Delilah, the Philistine captains came to her and said, "If you can help us to capture Samson, we will pay you a great deal of money. Try to find out the secret of his great strength." Picture 2. So every day Delilah begged and coaxed Samson. "Please tell me what makes you so strong." At first he gave her the deceitful answer, but at least he told her the truth. "No razor has ever touched my head," he said. "If my hair were cut off, I would become as weak as any man." Picture 3. Then Delilah told the Philistine captains what Samson had said. "Bring the money you promised me," she said, "and hide yourselves in my house." They did so. Soon afterward, Samson came home. Delilah made him go to sleep in her lap, and as he slept, she called in a servant and ordered him to cut off Samson's long, magnificent hair. Then she called out mockingly, "Samson, awake! The Philistines are upon you." Picture 4. Samson awoke with a start to find himself in the grip of his enemies. He tried to shake himself free, but his great strength had left him, and the Philistines bound Samson, put out his eyes and led him away, bald, weak, and blind. Picture 5. They took Samson to Gaza, one of their cities, bound with bronze chains. He had to push the heavy millstone all day long, grinding the grain at the prison mill. Soon his hair began to grow again. Picture 6. One day the Philistine rulers held a great feast at Gaza. Thousands of people filled the palace and swarmed upon its flat roof. "Bring Samson here," they shouted, "and let him make sport for us." And they sent a young lad to bring Samson from the prison. As the boy led Samson before them, they laughed and made jokes about the helpless prisoner. "Lead me between two of the pillars that hold up the roof," Samson whispered to the boy, "so that I may lean on them." The boy obeyed. Picture 7. Samson raised his blind eyes toward the sky. "O Lord God," he prayed, "remember me and strengthen me, that I may be avenged." Suddenly he felt strength surging into his body. God was with him again at last. "Let me die with the Philistines," shouted Samson. Seizing a pillar in each hand, he bowed himself with all his might, and the pillars fell. The roof and the screaming people upon it came tumbling down onto the ground below. Thus Samson, in dying, won his greatest victory over the enemy. David and Goliath. VIEW-MASTER Reel 2. Picture 1. About 60 years after the time of Samson, the Israelites were at last united under their first king, a warrior named Saul. But the Philistines still continued to fight them and to afflict them. In Bethlehem there lived a man named Jesse, who had 8 sons. The 3 eldest followed Saul to battle against the Philistines, but David, the youngest, tended his father's sheep at home. One day Jesse told David, "Go to your brothers and see how they fare. Take them this bushel of roasted wheat and these loaves and cheeses." "I go, my father," said David. Picture 2. In the Philistine army was a giant named Goliath, who stood more than 9 feet tall. Every day he would shout insults at the army of Israel. "Choose yourselves a man and let him come and fight me. If he can kill me, we will be your servants. But if I kill him, you shall serve us." But the men of Israel were afraid to fight. Picture 3. When David reached the camp and heard Goliath's boasts, he went to King Saul. "I will fight the giant," he said. "I'm not afraid." "But you are only a youth," protested the king. "I killed a lion and a bear to save my father's sheep," said David. "The Lord will deliver me." Picture 4. "Go, and the Lord be with you," said Saul. He turned to his armor bearer. "Put my own armor and helmet on this brave lad." But David was not used to wearing armor or using a sword. "I cannot go with these," he said. He took them off and picked up his sling. Picture 5. David went to a nearby brook and chose 5 smooth stones. He put them into the bag at his side. Then, carrying his sling, he went forth to meet the giant. Picture 6. When Goliath saw a shepherd boy coming to fight him without sword or armor, he roared with laughter. "I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field," he shouted. "You come to me with a sword and a spear and a shield," answered David. "But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts." Picture 7. And David took a stone from his bag and slung it at Goliath, and it smote the giant in the forehead, so that he fell on his face to the earth. And David ran to the giant and drew Goliath's sword from its sheath and cut off his head. Then the Philistines, when they saw their champion dead, fled in fear, and God gave the victory to Israel because a shepherd boy had faith. Daniel in the lion's den. VIEW-MASTER Reel 3. Picture 1. More than 500 years after the time of David, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon took the city of Jerusalem. He seized the holy vessels of gold and silver from the Lord's temple and carried the people of Judah to Babylon as captives. After their arrival at Babylon, the king told Ashpenaz, the master of his household, to choose 4 handsome and intelligent young men of Judah to be educated and raised as princes. Ashpenaz chose Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were taught all the lore of the Chaldeans, and the king was delighted with their learning and wisdom. Picture 2. Nebuchadnezzar set up a golden statue 90 feet tall and gathered his people before it. "Hear, O people," cried the king's herald. "Whenever you hear the sound of musical instruments, you shall bow low and worship the statue. Anyone who disobeys shall be cast into a fiery furnace." But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would not worship the statue. When the king was told this, he was furious and sent for the 3 youths. "Fall down and worship," he commanded, "or you shall be cast into the fiery furnace." "We worship only the true God," they replied. In a rage, Nebuchadnezzar gave orders that the furnace should be heated 7 times as hot as usual. He commanded his men to bind the 3 young men and throw them into the flames. Picture 3. So fiery was the heat of the furnace that it killed the men who lifted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to cast them in. But the flames did not touch the 3 young men. King Nebuchadnezzar came near to the furnace and looked in and was amazed. He saw the 3 men, free and unbound, walking about, praying and praising their God. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come forth. He called. They came out from the midst of the fire. Not a hair of their heads was signed, and there was not even the smell of fire on their clothing. "Blessed be your God," said Nebuchadnezzar, and he promoted the 3 young men in his realm. Picture 4. Many years later, Nebuchadnezzar died, and his son Belshazzar became king. Belshazzar made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords, and they drank wine from the holy vessels which Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem many years ago. Suddenly, in the midst of their revelry, there appeared on the wall of the banquet room the fingers of a man's hand, writing words in a strange language. The king's face turned white with fear. He summoned his wise men, but they could not read the writing. Then he called for Daniel. "O king," said Daniel, "I will make known the writing to you. It is a warning from God. These are the words, and their meanings mean God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you are weighed in the balances and are found wanting. Upharsin, your kingdom will be divided between the Medes and Persians." In that same night, Daniel's words came true. The Medes and Persians attacked Babylon, and King Belshazzar was slain. Darius the Mede became the new ruler over the kingdom of Babylonia. Picture 5. King Darius trusted Daniel and made him one of the 3 assistant rulers in his kingdom. But the other rulers were jealous of Daniel. They knew that Daniel prayed to God every day. So they thought of a scheme to force Darius to punish Daniel. They went to the king and said, "O king, we ask you to make a new law. For the next month, anyone who asks anything of any good or man, except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions." The king agreed and signed the new law. Then the men spied on Daniel and found him praying to God as usual. They went back to Darius. "O king," they said, "Daniel had disobeyed your law. He is praying to his God." King Darius was sorry, for he loved Daniel, but the law could not be changed. Sadly, he ordered that Daniel be cast into the lion's den. Picture 6. The king followed his soldiers as they pushed Daniel toward the mouth of the lion's den. "Fear not, Daniel," said Darius. "May your God, whom you serve continually, save you." "I have no fear," answered Daniel. A great stone was placed over the mouth of the den, so Daniel could not escape. The king walked slowly back to his palace. All that night he sat alone, neither eating nor sleeping. Picture 7. At daybreak the king hurried to the lion's den and cried out in a tone of anguish, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God been able to deliver you from the lions?" "O king," said Daniel, "my God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not hurt me, because I was found blameless before him." Then King Darius was glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the lion's den. And he wrote a new decree: "In all of my realm men shall fear and worship the God of Daniel, for he is living God, and his kingdom is forever." We want to add new videos every day, so please subscribe to our channel.
And if you had fun, thumbs up.